and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I want to start off with just reminding you about a couple of things that's important, and I'll do this as we go along. We're still learning song intervals, and we're going to be on that for a while. But I want you to know, if you are jumping from a low note to a high note, or a high note to a low note, there may be differences that you need to put in terms of the air that you put into your instruments, how much air you blow in. Generally speaking, if you're going higher, then you're going to put more air in. Or if you're going louder, you're going to put more air in. Now you have to be careful, because if you put too much in, you may actually change the pitch a little. The idea is to be able to get high or low with more or less air, whatever you need, and still maintain the same pitch. But if you do high notes, then it's likely that you're going to have to put in a little more air. It's also likely that you're going to have to squeeze your lips a little more tightly for the higher notes. Now let me show you the way that you should have the instrument in your mouth. It's a little bit of review of the way that you put the instrument in your mouth and the mouthpiece and how far you go in and all of that. That's important. So this is the mouthpiece. This is the head joint. From here to here is the head joint. This is the mouthpiece right here. Now you should put the mouthpiece about a third of the way in with your teeth on top and your lower lip curled over the bottom teeth. So you've got the softer lip underneath and the teeth on top like this. And then you squeeze the lips on the side. It's not that hard to do. Basically, it's the same way that you would do a saxophone or a clarinet or any of the instruments that have a mouthpiece like this. This is called a Fipple mouthpiece, and it's anything like that. And then that should do you fine. But in terms of air, you push the air a little bit when you're going up to a higher note, and you push the air definitely a little bit if you're going to be loud. Softer requires less air, but you may go a little flat, so there's not a lot of difference between loud and too loud, or soft and too soft. Now, if you squeal a note, and I'm going to try to do it. See, I did it at first. That squeal means that you have either squeezed your mouth or your lips too tight, or you've blown too much air in. Any instrument can squeal. Now, I know that clarinets are known for it. Saxophones, not so much. But you can do it on any instrument. You can get a squeal on any instrument if you just do too much and it's wrong. So I'm going to try to make the squeal again and then bring it back to a normal pitch. Now, the higher pitch was like a whistle, and I squeezed my lips a little too hard, and then so therefore the air did not get the way it should in the instrument, and as a result of that you get that squeal. Now that squeal is also called an overtone. That's the name for it. And the overtone is really a sound. It's really a note, but it's not a note that you want, and it's not a note that's very stable. So let me try it again. I don't know if I can do it on the lower registers. Harder on that note. Now the higher note, that's really a note. That's not just a squeal. It sounds like a squeal because it's an unstable note and it doesn't sound good, and you know for sure it doesn't belong there, but it actually is a note, so it's called an overtone. An overtone is a note, but it's a note that's really out of pitch and out of range of what you're trying to get, so it sounds just like a squeal, usually by either pressing the lips too tight or actually putting in too much air, more air than the instrument needs. Now, one of the most difficult notes to get would be the lowest note. That's the low C. That's as low as the instrument can go. And even the flute can't go any lower than that. But if you put too much air in the note, Or I might even get an octave. It's a little bit out of pitch because you don't play an octave C like that. But I mean, you can kind of squeak it out. The lowest note on a flute happens to be that low C, and it's also one of the hardest notes to get. It's easier on a flute to get the higher notes than it is the lower notes because it requires so little air to do the lowest note that it's very easy to squeal it or to squeak it or not to get it at all. The other problem with the lower note on any instrument, but especially on a recorder like this, if you're elderly and your hands are arthritic, or if you have some kind of a hand condition or a hand injury, it's hard to make that stretch. It's not a big stretch between this D and this C, but it's hard to make it. And on a flute, it's also hard to make it. It's not that this distance is great, but when you get the lowest note, you require very little air to get the note. Now, it's not going to be very loud. You know, if there's a ton of people playing, you're not going to really hear it. But if you have a group of flutes and they're all playing that low note, then it will be heard. It'll be heard a little louder, everyone playing it. But it's very, very hard to get those lower notes because most people are going to overblow. When they overblow, they're going to put too much air into the instrument, and they're going to end up by squeaking it, squealing it, or not even getting the note at all. You might not even get the note. Now, you may not realize that I played the C major scale. I went C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, covering the lowest note, but I gradually lessened the amount of air that I put in the instrument as I was playing down the scale. So when I get to this low C, it became much easier to play it because already I had cut out a lot of the air so I wouldn't have too much, so therefore I wouldn't be overblowing. The other thing is, with these instruments, with a recorder, there are two little holes here. If I can get this right so you can see it, two little holes, a larger one and a smaller one. And there is also for the note above it, that D has two holes and that C has two holes. And so to get that low C, you have to cover both of those holes with your littlest finger. If you don't get it just right, it would be like half-holing, and you're going to end up with a C sharp. You can hear that sharp. I'm just kind of gliding it in. It's hard to get it, but that's what it's there for. You have those two holes, and they have the two holes with the D. It'll be easier with the D. And so you get the D sharp. You have to make sure. So I got the low C, and then I got the C sharp. Very hard to get them, because it's very hard to get your finger to glide just exactly where it should be. Now, the older instruments only have one hole for the D and the C. And that's okay, they play them just fine. In fact, I think they play them as well as these two-holed instruments do, because all you do is you half-hold. When you half-hold, you pull your finger out a little so that not the whole hole is covered. And when I do that, I can go from a G to a G sharp. Now, if I'm playing an A, and I use that half hole, then I'm really playing an A flat. And then the G, and G sharp, which would be the same as an A flat. It's easier to do it on the upper, on some of the left-hand fingers because the holes are bigger and you don't have such a small finger covering it. And of course for octaves, you know that for a lot of notes, you just pull the thumb hole. You pull your thumb down on the thumb hole. I'm going to show you more with this instrument here. This is a Japanese Stansby Jr. made in Japan, and I like it a whole lot. It's a student model, but you can easily see the tone hole or the thumb hole in the back, which is another tone hole, and you can easily see, if I do this, that when I'm half holing it, you can see I'm pulling the thumb down, and there's a little bit of that hole that is not covered. The rest of it is. Don't take it all off. I just pull it down so half of it shows. And for a lot of notes, you can get octaves that way. And all I'm doing is I'm shifting my thumb back and forth over that hole. Other instruments have what's either called a register key or an octave key. If it's an octave key, then when you press it, you get an octave up. For the clarinet, it's called a register key because when you use it, you don't get an octave. You get an octave plus another 5 notes on top of that, so it has a different kind of sound. For the clarinet, you have 2 scales. You have a scale for the lower register and then a scale for the upper register, which is not the same as the lower register because when you push your register key to get the higher register, you're not getting an octave, you get an octave and 5 notes. That makes the scale altogether different. Well, you can see different instruments do it in different ways, but doing the recorder, not all of the octaves are done with that half holing of the thumb in the back. However, a lot of them are. The D is not. I mean, I can force it, I think. It's a little bit out of pitch, but I half hold it. But normally for the D, for a high D, you lift everything up. So what balances the instrument? Well, the mouth balances it in some way, and you could put your right hand, the thumb in the back, anywhere it happens to land. There's no tone hole there. That helps it. And I also know that if you press your pinky and maybe the 4th finger, you can use your fingers, your right-hand fingers, the 4th and the 5th, as a balancing. It helps you to balance. It's very easy to lose an instrument and drop it if you only have 1 finger on it plus your mouth and your thumb in the back. You have to have a way to balance it. For larger instruments, you have a music strap, and it hooks in the back, so even if you did start to drop it, you could catch it again. It wouldn't go to the floor. But for a little instrument like this, they don't have those straps, and so you have to devise ways to kind of balance it. And it's a little bit tricky to do that. Now, the way the flute plays the D is that you simply lift this finger. And you can keep these fingers down, and you can keep these fingers down. All you need to do is raise that 1 finger. You don't even have to change anything in the back. That back tone hole is covered for the low D, B, A, G, F, E, D. Excuse me. All of those notes are covered. The thumb hole is covered. This is the low D. To get the high D, don't move anything except this finger up. So I consider that, even though it's not a traditional finger for the recorder, it does work. And if I'm playing difficult music, I sometimes do that because doing this is a lot easier than doing this, you know, and then hoping that you don't balance it. But remember, for different notes, you may have to use different amounts of air. You may have to change your embouchure a little. The embouchure is the muscles that you use around the mouthpiece when you have the mouthpiece in, and you may have to change that. I know flutes change the position of their mouthpiece a little bit by turning the instrument. I don't have it here, but if you were doing this, and if I was playing across, then a lot of times you might twist the instrument a little towards you or a little away from you, depending upon what register you want to play with. You're not changing any of the fingerings or anything like that. So now I've talked about that. I just want to let you know that, and so don't be surprised if you have to put more air in for higher notes or for louder notes, and then cut the air back for lower notes and also for softer notes. Now I want to show you a little bit about timing before we get into the intervals. We know that most of the time we use, if we focus on the bottom, we know for the most of the time, this is 3/4. When we have, I didn't put in the treble clef, but it's the same song. This is a song called Morning Has Broken. It's an actual hymn. And a lot of people, it's their favorite hymn. And it's written in 9/4 time. Now, isn't that unusual? Remember, 9 is the number of beats there are in a measure, and the 4 stands for the quarter note getting 1 beat. Now, I kind of rewrote it and changed it to 3/4 time because that's more familiar to most people. It's like waltz tempo. But here again, 3 beats to the measure, but here again, the quarter note has 4 beats. If we take a look at this diagram down here, I've just written a circle, put 2 lines across, 1, 2, 3, 4. By doing these 2 lines, I have 4. 4/4 would be the whole circle, and 1 of the 4ths would be 1. So that would be 1 quarter, this is another quarter, this is another quarter, this is another quarter. All of those quarters are each 1 quarter, but they make the whole. So therefore, when you get a quarter note like this, which is just number 4, 4 stands for, usually it stands for the quarter note getting 1 beat. Now, I can think of times when it's different, but I'm not dealing with those times when it's different. We're talking about the usual. There's always a way that something might change. But so we're doing 9/4. Now, how do you count it? Well, the quarter note gets 1 beat. 1, 2, 3. Also, since this is 9/4, you would say 7, 8, 9. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The quarter notes are still getting 1 beat, but these dotted halves are all 3 beats. How does that work? Well, a half note, it would be the same as 2 quarter notes. That would be half. So a half note is worth 2 beats. But you put a dot on it, and that adds an extra beat to it, because the extra dot means that it's worth half more than what it would have been without the dot. So if this is worth 2 beats, you add half again to it. Half again is going to be 1 more beat. Half of 2 is 1, and that turns out to be a 3-beat note. This turns out to be a 3-beat note. Or if I want to, if I switch it to 3/4 time, which I did down here, the quarter note still gets 1 beat, but here I could put the dotted half, it's still 3 beats, this dotted half is still 3 beats, or I could put a whole note and it's still 3 beats, or a whole note, 3 beats. Now I tie them together so you play them as one, but each one is worth 3 beats. Why is it worth 3 beats? It's worth 3 beats because a whole note is worth whatever the time signature says that it's worth. So if it's 3/4 time, it's going to be worth 3 beats. If it was like 6/4 time, it might be worth 6 beats. Whatever the time signature says, the whole note, whatever it is worth that much. And so therefore, that's the way it works. So I'm going to play this, or at least play part of it, and hope I don't break too many copyright laws. I would like to have you see if you can follow this. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And that's the way it goes all the way through. And I'll play it, and then I'll play it again in 3/4 time. Basically, in 3/4 time, I've changed it from 9/4 to 3/4. So this would be a measure, and I draw a bar line. This would be another measure, and I draw a bar line. This is another measure, and there's already a bar line. So after the count of 3, I would put in a bar line, which is exactly what I've done down here, to make that 3/4 time rather than 9/4 time. So let me play it. It's not fast, and it's not hard to play, and it's really quite a nice piece. And that's the whole piece. So if I'm going to count it like 3/4, because I rewrote it to 3/4 time, which is more familiar to most people, the key signature is the same, the notes are the same, but I'm making it 3 beats to a measure instead of 9 beats to a measure. So it is 1, 2, 3. Then this is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And you notice I had the dotted half here, and a whole note here and a whole note here. And the reason I'm doing that is I want to show you that it amounts to the same thing in terms of the time. You could do it either way. It doesn't make any difference at all in terms of the time. It's easier for me to write the whole note than I avoid doing the dot and the stem and all of that, but it actually is the same thing. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now you play this really for 6 beats. It is a 3-beat note, but I've put a tie in. So you don't tongue that, you just add that to it. So you're playing 2 measures with 1 note instead of tonguing it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, all the way through. Instead of 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way through. And the main difference is I decided to put more measures in and have a count of 3 instead of a count of 9, which is probably easier to read for most people. But when you realize it and you're only counting 9 beats instead of 3 beats, it's exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same song. Well, I've spent most of my time on that and about how you blow into notes. Don't be discouraged if you're squealing a lot. If you're a beginner, just back off a little on the air, loosen the sides of your mouth a little bit if you're squeezing real tight, and you'll find most of those squeals, which are really notes, which are really overtones, will kind of go away. It's a problem that you won't have. And let me remind you, I do have time for this. If I've got a G, B-A-G. If I want to hit an E, I just do put the other 2 the fingers down. B-A-G-F-E. So I'm on a G, I want to play the E, and go back and forth between the 2. I can keep these fingers down because I'm going to need them for both notes. So why pick them up and start all over again? A lot of students do that. They think they have to start all over and just play the notes and do the spacing between and finger them all over. If you have your fingers down and you're going to use them for the next note, don't pick them up and start all over. Let them stay down and just add the fingers that you need. Your fingering will be much more secure. Your playing will be much more secure. You don't want to make any unnecessary movements because it's not necessary and it doesn't help your playing at all. So keep the fingers down that you need, and then you can add fingers as you need. And if you need to take them up for a note because the note doesn't require it, then just go ahead and do it. So we'll close it here, and we'll be doing once again more of the work on intervals next time. Please join me then.